A 70-year-old blind old mother was given a yes by a monster. While my mother was a widow, 20 years had passed since my father's death. Someone took advantage of my blind mother's blindness. When I reached this path, I was tormented to know about the culprit. I was surprised to see the doctor's face. Sometimes I was sitting outside the doctor's room, unaware of everything. I was looking at my mother, who was blind. My mind could not accept the fact that what my ears were hearing was an unbelievable thing. My head started spinning badly. My heart was beating so fast that I had lost my senses. Sweat drips on my face were dripping down to the ground. How was this possible? I wiped the sweat off my palms. I took the report from the doctor with great disbelief. I came out of his room and held my mother's hand, and brought her out of the clinic. My mother had been unwell for a few days. Whatever she ate, it was expensive. I thought her digestion was bad. That's why I brought her to a nearby clinic. But the news I got to hear, my senses were lost. The doctor had called me to his room alone. Mother was sitting on a chair outside. The doctor told me this news with great secrecy, because at this age, women are less likely to get pregnant. I was taking her home with my mother's hand. Who could have done such a disgusting thing? There were only 3 men in my house. My husband, father-in-law, and younger brother-in-law. Everything was going fine till now, because my blind mother used to live with me in my in-laws' house. She had no one in this world except me. After my father's death, she raised me with great difficulty, and my marriage was going well, which she allowed my mother to keep in my house. My mother stayed with me all day. When I was working in the kitchen, she used to sit on the table kept in the kitchen and talk to me. My husband and my brother-in-law and father-in-law were not at home all day. They used to go to the mosque in the time of prayer. Sometimes they used to sit outside with their friends, and they used to return after Isha at night. My husband Umar's mother passed away 5 years ago. My father-in-law did not get married. My brother-in-law also used to respect me and my mother-in-law a lot. He used to do most of his work. He never tried to be indifferent to me. And he never used to talk to my mother-in-law other than saluting her. 20 years had passed after my father's death, and my mother did not get married again because of me. Because she was blind, and she did not want her other son to take advantage of her blindness and do anything wrong with me. But today, someone took advantage of her blindness with my mother and did something that was tormenting my soul. After my father's death, I used to get a lot of proposals. But I had only one condition for marriage, that I could not leave my mother alone. She was blind. She could not live alone at home. I used to take care of her. That's why I could not leave her alone. This was the reason that my relationship was not yet decided. Because in the house where the boy's mother was already present, how could she tolerate that her mother also started living with her daughter-in-law? Therefore, the people who agreed to this condition for marriage, there was no woman in their house. There were only 3 men, and one was their father, my husband, and his younger brother. When I got married and reached my in-laws' house, there was a room available for my mother. My husband also respected my mother a lot. My brother-in-law used to study in the university. He used to stay out of the house most of the time. Apparently, I could not see anything that I doubted those people. But the report that was in my hand at that time was explaining something else to me. Unwillingly, my thoughts started going towards the men present in my house. I was caught in a very big problem. Undoubtedly, my husband was very good. He also took a lot of care of me and my mother. If I had asked my mother about what had happened to my mother in her in-laws' house, she would have certainly thrown me out of the house along with my mother. I was very worried. When I reached home, I did not tell anything to my mother either. As soon as I told her the news, her BP would have increased by hearing this. She was already a patient of blood pressure, that my mind was completely lost. Who did I doubt? Who was doing such a disgusting thing? When I reached home, I sat in my mother's room with Chakrasar. What is the matter, son? You have been quiet for a long time. What did the doctor say? My mother asked me because I was a very talkative girl. I used to talk all the time, but today, it was as if my speech had stopped. Yes, nothing. Mother, the doctor has given medicine. You will be fine, mother. You take rest. Saying this, I laid my mother on her bed and started preparing food in the kitchen. But my mind was constantly on my mother-in-law. She could not see with her eyes, but she could feel. No one comes close to her. Who could it be? My father-in-law or my brother-in-law? The tension in my mind began to pull. My head started spinning badly. No secret was giving me the truth. What should I do? Whom should I talk to? My father-in-law will never tolerate such a thing about his father and brother. And how should I talk to my mother? How should I tell her? When Umar returned from office, he brought more roses for me. But I could not even smile. The trouble I was going through was unbearable for me. Umar looked at me quietly and started saying something to me. What happened? Why are you quiet? Are you feeling well? What should I answer? I said that I have a headache. He said, eat food and then take medicine. I was thinking that after eating we will go for a long drive. But you are not feeling well. So you take rest. After eating, I came to my room. I hid Mother's reports in the cupboard. I wanted to know who comes to Mother's room. When Umar came to my room at night, I said that Mother is not feeling well. I want to sleep with her. He did not object to what I said. He said, what is there to ask? You go and take care of your mother. Umar was a very good person. He never used to be strict with me about my mother. I went and slept with Mother. Mother was sleeping. But I woke up after listening to her talking in sleep. This means that someone comes to my mother at night and could not sleep with her all night. No one came to the room all night. After breakfast, Umar and my younger brother-in-law left the house. My father-in-law went to his room. I brought Mother to my room. I asked Mother who comes to her room at night. Whatever my mother-in-law told me, it was enough to wake me up. At first, I doubted my father-in-law. He used to be present at home all the time. But then I also started thinking that he prays 5 times a week. My heart was very big. It started to feel weird. On one hand, he prays all the time. He talks about religion. On the other hand, I started doubting my brother-in-law. He used to stay awake till night. The sound of television used to come from his room. Once he told me that you are exactly like your mother. Your mother is very beautiful. She looks like an elder sister instead of your mother. He said this in the early days of my marriage. I ignored it. But now as soon as it came to my mind, I had such a fire inside me which was unbearable. Someone used to force my mother with him by making her unconscious. My mother used to feel that some immoral work is being done to her. But she used to be proud. For me, this was an unbearable thing. That person does not feel ashamed that even a blind man making a sick woman a target of lust. My helplessness was that if I had raised my voice, I would have got the stain of divorce. No matter how old he was, he would not listen to his father, nor would he beat him. Because he used to serve his father as much as he respected my mother. Obviously, my father-in-law also called my mother as sister. He had never looked at my mother in front of me. But whatever he was doing in the name of decency was a very bad thing. I started getting angry at my father-in-law. Once he brought a fruit for me from the market and gave me 1 kilo separately. He said, your mother-in-law is getting weak. Maybe you are not getting anything for her because of your jealousy. So give her this apple. Even then I felt that he was feeling my mother-in-law. When I woke up at night, Umar was not in the room. Then after a long time, he would come to the room. I would ask, where did you go? He would say, I have a habit of smoking. At night when father goes to sleep deeply, only then I go to the courtyard and smoke. Otherwise, when father smells the cigarette immediately, he scolds me. I would smile and say that he is only talking about your benefit. Those ordinary things that happen in ordinary homes. I started doubting all those things. My mind started revolving all around. I had to reach him to the culprit at any cost. After all, who was he? My father-in-law? My brother-in-law? Or my city? Thinking about this, my mind was bursting. Because all this was going to affect my own married life too. And it was possible that my house would also be ruined. At this age, my mother was in great pain. In such a pain that she was unaware of. And it was a double burden for me that how could I tell all this truth to my mother which I had heard from the doctor. She could not bear it. Even if she had not told me now, how could this thing be hidden? I was silent, but I only knew what pain and suffering was going on inside me. Now I used to make excuses to my mother every day that my mother was not well. I was going to sleep with my mother. I used to wait for that person all night who was becoming a reason for my mother to suffer. For a few days, my mother remained silent. But after that, she did not say anything to me. But I started feeling something. In her eyes, happiness seemed clear to me. A few months had passed since we got married. He loved me a lot. He used to spend the whole day in the office. So he wanted to spend some time with me at night. But I myself was a victim of mental distress. I did not even realize that desire of age. And now I even forgot to work. At night, I even forgot to iron Umar's clothes. He was already angry with me. I got late for office in the morning. He started ironing his clothes out of anger. When I asked him to iron my clothes, he stared at me angrily and said, "You just serve your mother. That is all you care about." He was so angry at that time that he was not listening to me. How could I make breakfast? He left the office without having breakfast. I was worried about my mother. Seeing Umar's attitude, my heart became unbearable. I sat in my room and started crying. Umar's mood was very bad at night. So I did not even ask to go to my mother's room. I had already apologized to Umar for my mistake. But he started saying, "Do not embarrass me by apologizing. You should understand. I do not even get a chance to talk to you all day." He also agreed quickly. But the next morning, my mother started saying, "Why did you not sleep with me last night? When you do not come, he comes." And that night is full of torment for me. My mother started crying along with me. My heart was cut off. My tears were flowing. Who was doing all this? I did not have any relatives in this city, nor anyone close to me, whom I could trust and leave my mother and see with my own eyes. Even then, I would have arranged for their accommodation separately. But she was a helpless woman. I used to take her to the washroom as well. I had not yet come out of this confusion as to what to do and what not to do. Once I heard my mother screaming. I got up in a hurry. When I looked around, Umar was also not present in the room. When I got up and left quickly, my brother-in-law was in my mother's room. And my mother was screaming. Because of her blindness, she was shaking her right and left hands as if she was trying to get close to someone. She was saying, "Stay away from me, my brother-in-law." He was a little away from my mother's bed. He was not looking at me with understanding eyes. Seeing me in my mother's room, I started having a strange fear. I grabbed him by the neck and shook him. I said, "Don't you feel ashamed?" While doing such a disgusting thing with my mother, Rangat flew away. He said, "Bobby, what are you saying? I had come after hearing your mother screaming." I said, "You are lying. You are making excuses by looking at me. You make fun of my mother every day." When I screamed, my father-in-law and husband both reached there. My brother-in-law was holding his gun to me. My husband also came to me. My brother-in-law also went to the pub in anger at that time. He said, "You are like your mother is like my mother. You should be ashamed." I was sleeping while making such an accusation. When I heard your mother screaming, I came running. I am still asking her what happened to her that you came. I said, "You are lying." My husband got rid of my brother-in-law's gun from my hand and got angry at me. He said, "What drama have you put on so late at night? You are screaming at this time of the night. What will the neighbors think about us?" I ignored Umar's words and said, "Arman is not a good boy. He made my mother unconscious every night, and what I said to him was that a slap hit my face hard. I fell far away." "What nonsense are you talking? I will tell you what comes to your mouth. Who are you, my brother?" But my father-in-law, who accused him, was also angry with him. He said, "First of all, we kept his real mother in our house as a sister, and secondly, she is blaming my own son for being ungrateful." Finally, what I was afraid of happened. My house was breaking. Umar told me that my mother cannot live in this house. I will arrange for her somewhere else. I was already suffering from mental torture. Where would I go with my mother to my house? I had rented it out while getting married. It was not going to be empty in such a hurry. I was so worried that I fell down. When I came to my senses, Umar was standing next to me. Some were angry and angry. I had a drip. The doctor was advising Umar to take care of me. He was completely silent. As soon as my drip was over, he brought me home. He took me to my room and made me sit there. He himself sat in front of me. He said, "The disgusting accusation you have put on my brother. If you had not arranged for your mother, I would have divorced you at night and thrown you out of the house. But you fell unconscious and fell down. and humanity demands that I take you to the hospital. But the news that I got to hear by taking you there, I can never leave you now. You are going to be the mother of my child. I was listening to them like a daughter in a lifeless mass. This news for me, that I am hopeful, was a very big good news. But the situation I was going through, I could not understand whether I should be happy or cry. My tears began to flow. I had reached the hands of my pain. Umar's words were still going on. He said, "Look, Gul, I love you very much. I also respect your mother a lot. Our father has taught us to respect and honor women. In the whole neighborhood, we have never heard anything like this, the accusation you have put on Arman. He is very stupid. It is better that you apologize to him. Now he is very angry. If you do not apologize, then your mother will not be able to live here. Now you think what you have to do." I am surprised to think that how did you even think like this? They were looking at me with suspicion. I got up and put my mother's reports in front of Umar and started crying. Umar took the reports in an incomprehensible way and started reading by calling. He also felt a shock. He started reading the reports again and again. I started crying with hiccups. I said, "What should I think after reading this? Umar has been living with me in this house, and at night someone smells the drug on him and makes him unconscious. Umar cannot see that, otherwise she would recognize who it is. Whom should I doubt? Umar has no way to apologize to me, to Arman. To save my house, I will join hands with Arman and apologize. But tell me, who is responsible for the torture that my mother and I have been through? You are my husband. You are my guardian. Why should I take the testimony of your decency from the neighbors? You tell me, how did my mother become unprotected? Who is to blame for this? It is easy for you to divorce me and throw me out of the house, so that your false decency remains. If you are so honest, then show me a DNA report. The truth will be revealed. And if any one of you is guilty, then tell me what punishment will be given to him." My tone had changed. Umar said, "If any one of us is guilty, then hand him over to the police." After a few days, all 3 reports were in front of me. When I saw the reports, I lost my mind. According to the DNA, all 3 of them were innocent. I would have also understood that they have made the reports wrong. But Umar himself took me to the hospital, and the laboratory from which the test was done was a well-known lab. Now I was confused. Who was doing all this? Umar put a camera in my mother's room. And as soon as a person entered my mother's room, Umar went into my mother's room and caught him. He had a mask on his face. When he took off the mask, I was surprised, because he was no one else. There was a doctor in our last lane who often took my mother with him, and he knew that my mother was Navina. The window of my mother's room opened to the back. There was a lane there. That doctor entered the room from the same way. He was a 45-year-old man of dark age. Because he was a doctor. That's why he had drugs with him. He used to smell drugs on my mother and do wrong with her. Umar handed him over to the police. I apologized to everyone. I went with Umar to get my mother's DNA done. Then I thought that not every person is bad. With the advice of my family and my mother's consent, I took my mother to the hospital and got her abortion done there. Because my mother was not at fault in this matter. She was carrying the burden of someone else's sin, and her culprit was behind the reconciliation. After that, Umar arranged a maid for my mother, who is still with my mother in her room and takes care of my mother. But even today, when I remember that incident, I feel like what my poor mother went through, friends. That's why I request you that if your parents are old, blind, or can't do anything by themselves, then it is necessary for them that you put a camera in their room and keep an eye on them, so that you can find out that they are not in any trouble. If you can't stay with them for 24 hours or are married and can't sleep with them, then it would be better to make such arrangements. I hope that you must have learned something from this incident. Don't forget to like this and share it with your friends and family. There must be so many children who are unaware of their parents, while at this age they need their children very much. Who knows, this sentence may have an effect on their hearts, and it may become a means of reward for us too. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and become a part of our family story heaven. Thank you.